A noble quest for justice. This is a fictional historical novel, not based on real events. Set amidst the fog-enshrouded streets and majestic manners of Victorian England in the 1850s, our tale unfolds in a land that, while inspired by geography and the pulse of actuality, exists solely within the realm of imagination. It is a story of love and honor, of intrigue and peril, and above all, of an unwavering commitment to justice, embodied in the heart of a young nobleman whose soul burned with the desire to right wrongs in a world too often governed by deceit and cruelty. In the ancient county of Westmoreland, amid rolling emerald meadows and veiled by the perpetual mists of an English dawn, the estate of the Fairfax family rose proudly against the creeping twilight of injustice. The manor, a proud edifice with ivy-laced stone walls and lofty spires, was home to Edward Fairfax, a young nobleman who embodied both the gentleness of a poet and the resolve of a warrior. Edward, though born into privilege, had never allowed the gilded trappings of his lineage to blind him to the suffering of those less fortunate. His eyes, a piercing shade of blue reminiscent of a clear summer sky, burned with the fire of duty as he resolved to uncover and confront the deep-seated corruption that had long festered beneath the surface of society. On a brisk autumn morning, as the amber leaves danced in the wind and the country awoke with a gentle rustle, Edward strode purposefully across the dew-dappled grounds of Fairfax Manor. His heart was heavy with the memories of past miseries, a forgotten peasant family wronged by greedy landowners, the silent cries of beggars in the market square, and the stifled lamentations of those whose voices had been suppressed by tyranny. As he ventured beyond the safety of his ancestral home, he encountered Henry Blackwood, a seasoned investigator with a reputation for relentless pursuit of truth. Their first conversation took place near the outer gate, where a modest crowd had gathered to trade tales of woe and whispered suspicions about the machinations of local authorities. "Edward," Henry said in a low and measured tone, his eyes reflecting both weariness and hope, "the winds of change are stirring. I have uncovered whispers of a conspiracy, one that reaches from the hallowed halls of Parliament to the neglected corners of our villages. Together, with your noble spirit and my modest skills, we may yet restore justice to this land." Edward's reply was resolute, his voice imbued with determination. "Henry, for too long have I remained a silent observer to injustice. I pledge my life and all I possess to serve not only the legacy of my family, but the cry of every soul that suffers under oppression." Thus, the two men sealed an alliance, each aware that their fates were entwined by a shared destiny of honor. The journey that sprawled before them was fraught with peril. Their quest saw them travel from the bustling streets of London with its steam-driven wonders and murky back alleys to the sleepy villages nestled in the foothills of the ancient Pennines. Along the way, the duo encountered a vivid tapestry of characters, each etched with humanity and touched by hardship. There was Margaret Sinclair, a compassionate healer whose tender ministrations had restored hope to countless impoverished souls, and Jonathan Merrick, a spirited lawyer with a mind as sharp as the blade of a duelist, whose courtroom battles echoed the fervor of ancient skirmishes for honor. In the candlelit corridors of an inn in the rustic town of Ashford, Edward and his companions gathered to share their plans while the wind howled outside like an omen of the trials yet to be overcome. Margaret's soft voice, akin to the gentle hum of a distant lullaby, stirred something deep within Edward. "Sir Edward," she began, meeting his gaze with unwavering sincerity, "justice is not merely the adjudication of wrongs, it is the affirmation of dignity in every soul we encounter. Your quest, noble sir, is a beacon that shall guide even the most forsaken to safe harbors." Her words, tender yet resolute, resonated in his heart as he recalled the quiet evenings spent poring over ancient manuscripts in the manor's vast library, books that spoke of chivalry, honor, and the eternal struggle between light and dark. Even as the company traveled further into territories rife with secrets and subterfuge, a palpable camaraderie blossomed among them. Their discussions often traversed beyond the mundane details of their investigation to musings on art, literature, and the very principles that made life worth preserving. Edward, whose education had spanned the classics of Milton and Shakespeare, found solace in debates about morality and the eternal verities. On one such star-laden night, while the group sat by a crackling fire in a secluded clearing, Jonathan shared his reflections on the inherent power of law. The pen, he argued passionately, can be as mighty as the sword. It is through reason and discourse that we truly challenge evils, for a well-turned argument may topple empires built on corruption. His zeal struck a chord with Edward, reaffirming his belief that courage and intellect were the true instruments of change. The path to unveiling the conspiracy was labyrinthine. Their investigation led them to clandestine meetings held in shadowy parlors, coded messages exchanged under the guise of innocuous letters, and dangerous liaisons with individuals whose allegiances were as shifting as the London fog. In one such encounter in a dimly lit back room of a tavern in Manchester, Edward found himself face to face with Lord Christopher Donnelly, a man of imposing stature whose words dripped with the venom of deceit. "Young Fairfax," Lord Donnelly intoned with a sly smile, "be wary of pursuing truths that may upend the very order you hold dear. In our world, justice is a luxury afforded to those who can tame the beast of chaos." Edward, though outwardly calm, felt his pulse quicken. His reply, measured yet defiant, was a solemn promise: "I shall never forsake my duty, even if it leads me to the heart of darkness." The measure of a man lies not in the ease of his passage, but in the courage with which he meets his trials. As the days turned to weeks, Edward's journey of self-discovery revealed the complex tapestry of human nature. In quiet interludes under vaulted heavens, he would often wander the ancient ruins that peppered the countryside, letting the weight of time and memory guide his thoughts. In these moments of solitude, he recalled his late father's words, spoken in a soft timbre during a long-forgotten evening: "My son, the world may be riddled with injustice, yet every act of kindness, no matter how small, is a rebellion against despair. In your heart lies the power to kindle hope where there is none." Such reflections fueled his strength on days when the burden of his mission seemed almost insurmountable and reminded him that justice was not an abstract ideal but a living, breathing promise to humanity. The expedition also bore witness to unexpected alliances. In the bustling docks of Liverpool, amidst the clamour of merchant ships and sailors' shouts, Edward encountered Lucy Harper, a resourceful woman whose intellect and bravery surpassed many seasoned men. Lucy, who had long suffered by the hand of unscrupulous authorities, became an ardent supporter of the quest for fairness. "Mr. Fairfax," she said during one fervent exchange, her eyes blazing with resolve over the rhythmic crashing of the waves, "your quest is not solely about personal redemption but the reclamation of a dignity stolen from us all. Grant me but a chance to serve, and together we shall restore balance to this troubled age." Her passionate plea and unyielding determination lent new vigor to the expedition, as the company began to trust not only in the strength of their convictions but also in the unpredictable magic of human solidarity. Yet, the forces arrayed against them grew ever more formidable. Whispers in the corridors of power hinted at a secret cabal, a syndicate of influential figures determined to maintain their dominion through underhanded means. These men and women, draped in the splendid yet suffocating trappings of aristocracy, conspired in luxurious drawing rooms where the soft glow of gaslight masked the sinister intent behind every smile. In the sumptuous yet stifling confines of a grand estate near Bath, Edward found himself embroiled in a perilous confrontation with Sir Reginald Ashcombe, a venerable member of the ruling elite. "You dare challenge the established order, young sir?" sneered Sir Reginald, his voice echoing across a hall filled with opulence and hidden malice. "Justice, as you so naively envision it, is a mirage, a fleeting fancy in the harsh realities of power." Unperturbed by the aristocrat's scorn, Edward responded with a fervour that belied his youth: "True justice is not measured by the wealth one wields, but by the righteousness of one's actions. No man, however mighty, may extinguish the flame of hope that burns within the hearts of the oppressed." Driven by his sacred vow and the hope instilled by companions both old and new, Edward pressed onward. The narrative of his quest wove through the picturesque lanes of Oxford, beneath the stone arches of ancient cathedrals, and along the misty banks of the Thames where legends of old seemed to whisper in the water's murmur. Each step was fraught with tension, yet every dawn brought with it the promise of renewal, a chance to further the cause, a spark that might ignite a revolution of compassion and truth. Amidst the quiet splendor of a blossoming spring, while cherry trees nodded in gentle accord to the hymn of rebirth, Edward convened a gathering of kindred souls at a secluded manor in the Cotswolds. Here, families displaced by the machinations of greed and tyranny found solace in shared strife, and common labourers discovered an unexpected nobility in their struggle for fairness. In the soft golden light of that tranquil afternoon, Edward addressed the assembly. His tone was both tender and stirring, a mixture of earnest hope and unswerving resolve. "Friends," he began, his voice resonant with conviction, "our lives have long been at the mercy of the powerful, our dreams sacrificed on the altar of self-interest. Yet today, as we stand united in this haven of solidarity, let us pledge ourselves to the cause of justice. Let compassion guide our actions, and let the bonds of our shared humanity be the fortress against which injustice shall crumble." The crowd, diverse in origin yet equally united in purpose, responded with fervent applause, a rumbling endorsement of a future where every man and woman might taste the sweetness of liberty and fairness. Thus began a series of audacious reforms that spread like a cleansing tide across the land. Edward, with the strategic acumen of a seasoned general and the benevolence of a saint, led a series of discussions with local officials and influential figures. In clandestine meetings held in overtly modest settings, public houses, back rooms of libraries, and even the quiet sanctums of venerable churches, the seeds of reform were sown. His every word, imbued with a passion for justice, served to awaken slumbering consciences and shatter the illusions of passive acceptance. "We stand at a crossroads," he declared during a particularly stirring assembly in a shadowed meeting hall in Birmingham, "and it falls to us to choose a path of righteousness. When the common man is empowered and the mighty held accountable, hope is reborn, and society is healed." The debate was not without opposition. The entrenched powers, fearful of losing their dominion and accustomed to the opulent decadence of their privileged lives, waged a thinly veiled war of words and surreptitious intrigues. Yet every attempt to quash the ember of rebellion only seemed to fuel its ardor. In one memorable confrontation in the echoing corridors of a grand estate in Surrey, a retinue of aristocrats set forth their grievances. "Your idealism is but a fanciful dream, Edward," intoned Lord William Easton, his monocle glinting in the lamplight, "an illusion that will shatter beneath the weight of reality. You risk the stability of our society for ideals most impractical." Edward's eyes, reflecting both sorrow and determination, met the cold gaze of his detractor. "A society built on injustice is destined to crumble," he replied firmly, "for righteous ideals are the bedrock upon which lasting progress is built. Today's idealism is tomorrow's legacy." Encouraged by these exchanges and buoyed by the faith of those who believed in his cause, Edward delved deeper into the murky waters of conspiracy. His investigations spanned the economic corridors of London's mercantile heart to the quiet, forgotten lanes of rural villages. He scrupulously gathered evidence and listened to the laments of those who had been victimized by a system rigged in favor of the powerful. During a fateful sojourn in a modest hamlet near Dover, he met Grace Wellington, a humble schoolteacher whose gentle eyes belied a steely will honed by years of quiet resistance. In a heartfelt conversation beneath the boughs of an ancient oak, Grace confided, "I have seen the ravages of greed and the despair that follows its wake. Yet I have also witnessed the transformative power of compassion. In your eyes, I see the hope of a better tomorrow, a tomorrow where every child may learn and every soul may flourish without fear." Her impassioned words solidified Edward's resolve, reaffirming that his quest was not merely for personal vindication but for the salvation of an entire generation. Over time, tales of Edward's unwavering courage began to ripple through the fabric of society like luminous threads stitching together a tapestry of reform. Rumors of secret meetings and covert alliances intrigued both the fervent supporters of justice and those who clung to the old order. The press, though controlled by the wealthy elite, began to note the quiet revolution that was taking root. Gentle exposes in the form of serialized recountings in discreet journals recounted the noble deeds of a young man fighting a battle that transcended personal ambition, a battle that spoke to the soul of a nation. In a particularly evocative episode, a storm raged across the sprawling moors near Yorkshire. The heavens themselves seemed to weep for the struggles that had beset the land. Amidst the tumult, Edward and his retinue sheltered in an abandoned chapel whose stone walls bore the scars of centuries past. As lightning illuminated sacred murals and thunder drowned out whispered confessions, Edward convened a midnight council with his loyal compatriots. "All around us, nature bears her heart," he said softly, his voice a gentle beacon amid chaos, reminding us that hope, like the dawn, cannot be forever eclipsed by darkness. We must, with each breath, champion the cause of justice until every injustice is vanquished and every wound healed. His words, as stirring as a hymn and as relentless as the storm, rekindled their spirits, forging an unbreakable bond of courage amidst adversity. The arduous campaign for justice was punctuated by moments of tenderness and quiet introspection. In the elegant salons of a summer fete at Fairfax Manor, under a gauzy sky of pastel blues and pinks, Edward found himself drawn into conversation with Isabella Hartley, a graceful and erudite noblewoman whose compassion was as renowned as her intellect. Over glasses of chilled elderflower cordial and amidst the lilting strains of a string quartet, Isabella revealed her own past of sorrow and resilience. "I have seen the suffering of those who, like the sparrows in winter, huddle in the shadows of neglect," she murmured, her voice soft yet piercing, "and I believe fervently in the redemption that true justice can grant." Their dialogue, steeped in literary allusions and tempered by genuine empathy, blossomed into a delicate romance, one that was not born merely of physical attraction, but of a shared commitment to the betterment of a society in desperate need of healing. In Isabella's eyes, Edward found not only love but an unwavering partnership. Together they envisioned a future where compassion would eclipse cruelty, and the powerless would reclaim their voice. Yet the forces of corruption, though battered, were far from vanquished. In the shadowy recesses of power, clandestine meetings continued to plot the undoing of Edward's reforms. Ambassadors of the old order, cloaked in finery and armed with influence, sought to turn the tide of public opinion with insinuations and half-truths. In one particularly perilous encounter at a masquerade ball in the palatial halls of a mysterious aristocrat in Kent, Edward found himself surrounded by masked foes whose smiles concealed daggers. The atmosphere was thick with whispered conspiracies and perfumed intrigue, every turn of the winding corridor a potential ambush. With his keen intellect and unerring sense of duty, Edward navigated the treacherous labyrinth of alliances as he attempted to extract crucial intelligence. "Your masquerade of civility will not hide the rot within," he declared boldly in a moment of private confrontation as he unmasked one of the conspirators. The truth, raw, unyielding, and luminous, sparked a cascade of events that would ultimately unravel the sinister network determined to keep the realm in chains. As the campaign for justice reached its zenith, the hearts of the people across England began to awaken. In bustling market towns and rain-soaked alleyways alike, whispers of a new dawn spread like wildfire. Empowered by the courage and integrity of Edward Fairfax and his intrepid companions, ordinary citizens found themselves emboldened to speak out against the machinations of the corrupt. A young factory worker in Birmingham, whose calloused hands had long toiled in the oppressive confines of an industrial mill, dared to pen an impassioned letter to the local magistrate. "In the light of Mr. Fairfax's conviction, I see a future where the chains of oppression may finally be undone." Such acts of defiance and hope wove a potent narrative of transformation, one that transcended borders and social strata. In time, the relentless pursuit of truth brought Edward face to face with the architects of injustice themselves. In a climactic gathering held in a grand chamber at a venerable courthouse in London, representatives of both reformers and reactionaries met under the watchful eyes of an assembly determined to redefine the essence of governance. The air was charged with expectation as Edward took the floor, his presence magnetic and his countenance stained neither by fear nor doubt. "Today," he declared, voice echoing against the ancient stone, "we stand at the precipice of a new era. An era in which every man, regardless of birth or fortune, is entitled to the dignity of justice. The old order, built on exploitation and treachery, must yield to the light of truth and equality." His words, delivered with the fervor of a man possessed by destiny, ignited a swell of approval that resonated through every soul present. Even those who had long championed the privileges of the elite felt a stirring in their hearts, a reluctant admiration for the steadfast spirit of the young nobleman. As reforms swept through the corridors of power, legislative measures were implemented to curb the abuses of authority and ensure that justice was administered not as a favor extended to the few, but as a birthright of every citizen. Edward's tireless investigations had unearthed irrefutable evidence of corruption, and his eloquent advocacy inspired a cadre of politicians to champion his cause. In a historic convocation in the hallowed chamber of the House of Commons, reform-minded members pledged to overhaul oppressive practices and institute measures that would protect the vulnerable from the rapacity of unchecked power. Though the struggle was far from over, the tangible progress that began to reverberate across the land filled the hearts of common folk with a renewed sense of hope, a hope that, even in the darkest of times, the light of justice could never be entirely extinguished. In the gentle embrace of a fading summer, as the golden rays of a setting sun caressed the ancient stones of Fairfax Manor, Edward found a moment's respite in quiet reflection. Strolling alongside a meandering stream that whispered timeless secrets, he contemplated the long and arduous journey that had led him from the sheltered corridors of nobility to the front line of a battle against systemic injustice. His thoughts turned to the many souls he had encountered, each person a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. In the murmuring ripples of the water and the rustling leaves overhead, he heard the echoes of promises made and lives forever changed by the simple yet profound act of believing that justice, when pursued with unyielding resolve, had the power to redeem even the most wayward of destinies. In one of the many heartfelt dialogues that punctuated his odyssey, Edward engaged in a soulful conversation with his dear friend and confidant, Charles Donovan, a modest clergyman whose quiet wisdom had long guided those in despair. "Edward," Charles intoned softly one wintry evening as they sat by a modest hearth in a small parish rectory near Oxford, "it is not through grand gestures alone that we heal a wounded society. True justice is often found in the smallest acts of kindness, a shared loaf of bread, a gentle word of consolation. It is this compassion that binds our collective humanity, and it is this that will ensure your legacy endures beyond the fleeting clamor of controversy." Edward's eyes glistened with both determination and humility as he responded, "Charles, your words remind me that even as we wage war against injustice, we must never lose sight of the tender mercies that make us human. My quest for justice is inseparable from my duty to care for the fragile souls who walk this earth. In every act of kindness, I see the seeds of a better future." Thus, as the seasons changed and the pages of history turned, the legacy of Edward Fairfax and his steadfast allies became woven into the fabric of a nation in transformation. Their efforts, though fraught with despair and danger, ultimately yielded a renaissance of hope, a rekindling of the spirit that had long lain dormant in the hearts of the populace. The once murky corridors of power began to gleam with the promise of transparency and fairness, as integrity and empathy gradually replaced entitlement and cruelty. Families once burdened with hopelessness found solace in newfound opportunities, and communities ravaged by exploitation began to rebuild foundations grounded in equity and mutual respect. In the final, luminous stages of his storied journey, Edward stood before a gathering of hundreds in a sun-dappled park on the outskirts of London, a place where people of every rank had come together to celebrate the triumph of justice over despotism. His voice, firm yet filled with the warmth of personal testimony, carried across the assembled throng. "My dear friends," he proclaimed, "today we bear witness to the power of unity and the inexhaustible strength of the human spirit. Our adversaries may have been formidable, yet it is our shared commitment, our unyielding belief in what is right, that has wrought this change. Let our lives be a testament to the truth that justice is not a mere ideal but a living, breathing force that can transform even the most troubled of times." The applause that followed was thunderous, a living, tangible celebration of the victory of hope and human decency over corruption and despair. In the years that followed that fateful day, Edward Fairfax continued to serve as a tireless guardian of righteousness. Though he never sought accolades or the adulation of the masses, his name came to be synonymous with the principle that every life held inherent worth and that no injustice, however entrenched, was insurmountable in the light of collective resolve. His enduring compassion and the many friendships forged amid adversity reminded the nation that progress is measured not solely in legislative victories or grand reforms, but in the quiet, persistent acts of empathy that heal the wounds of a fractured society. His journey was far from over, as each sunrise promised new challenges and every twilight whispered the possibility of redemption. As the narrative of this extraordinary quest drew to a close, the legacy of Edward Fairfax became enshrined not in monuments of stone, but in the hearts of ordinary people who had dared to dream of change. His example, a blend of virtuous idealism and pragmatic perseverance, inspired countless individuals to carry forth the mantle of justice in their own lives. In every corner of that vast, evolving country, the spirit of his struggle lived on a steady beacon amidst the swirling mists of uncertainty, a reminder that the fight for justice is eternal, and that every noble heart has the power to transform the world. And so, as twilight settled upon the land and the final notes of this saga echoed into the hush of the evening, the story of a young nobleman who risked all to secure justice for the oppressed remained a luminous testament to humanity's enduring capacity for hope, love, and redemption. His journey, etched in the annals of an imagined past yet resonating with truths timeless and profound, reminds us that in every heart lies the power to write a new destiny, a destiny where kindness prevails, where truth is valued above all, and where justice, once pursued with fearless determination, shines like the morning sun upon the fields of tomorrow. If you enjoyed the story, subscribe to my channel and check out the description to find out how you can support my work.